Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to my recap and review of Blood of My Blood Season 1, Episode 10, Something Borrowed. Alright my friends, it is time for a recap and review of this episode, our first season finale, which I gotta tell you, I had so many ups and downs with. I was hooked to it. Also, some parts were hard to watch. I had butterflies in my tummy. I was screaming at the TV. There was so many emotions that were happening. And it definitely managed to surprise me, specifically in two spots. And what's funny is it surprised me with things that I already knew were going to happen. And then, yeah, this is going to be intense. So we're going to get through it, and then we will talk about that little cliffhanger that it left us with and what we'll be looking at for a season 2. And then I was going to make this a second video, but in all honesty, as I've shared, like, Outlander videos are really a passion project for me. They don't necessarily help my channel overall. I know no one wants to hear that, but I just gotta say it. So making a video about this that's separate from recaps and stuff wouldn't be the most beneficial. So this may be an extra long episode because at the end I'll talk about my feelings overall and maybe what my favorite and least favorite episodes overall were, to kind of wrap this up and everything. So yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. I got my notes. Let's talk about this as we work through it and give you my commentary, as it were. That's what we're here for. Thank you to everyone if you've watched all of these episode recaps. Make sure you do like and hype this video. If I've talked to you about how to hype a video, you can do that on your phone or on your computer by going down to where the comment section is. If you swipe over, there's an option to hype the video. Please do that because, again, if people really enjoyed this, I will continue reviewing these episodes for season 2, but otherwise, maybe we won't. We'll just see. So, we start off with a cold open that is set in the future, and we were teased with this with some of the photographs that came out. We finally get to meet Uncle Lamb, who is, of course, Henry's brother, and he's there for Claire's second birthday, and they're having this little birthday party for her, this cute little version of Claire, just so adorable, and Lamb gives this big, long, philosophical wish for her future, which a lot of it has to do with adventure and seeing places, and Henry's a little bit like, okay, cute, I think that was enough, she's only 2. But a beautiful little scene there. And then we go into our intro and everything. And we see at the end of this one that this was written actually by Diana and Matthew Roberts. So very interesting pairing for writing. And I gotta tell you, I can feel it with this one in how Ellen and Brian are written. Like, I feel like I can tell the difference. Not that she can change the course of the story, because she can't. We've said this, like, where this story is going, Diana can only guide so much. They're going to do what they're going to do. But when dialogue is written, I feel like I can tell that it's her. Maybe that's just my wish fulfillment thinking. But when I look at the episodes written by her this year, or in this season, I can tell when she was talking. Now, the actions of the characters may still serve the purpose of the script. I mean, they're supposed to. But I feel like the actual words that get said feel more like those characters. Particularly, we finally get the Murtaugh we know and love in here, which we'll get to it. But anyway, we have our intro. And then we come back to the wedding scene here. And we show a bride walking up to the front of the church. And they were very deceiving with this. This was great, though they didn't like lie, besides to have the girl very much fully, like, the veil over her face is like extra thick and you can't tell who it is. And we see Colm and Dougal standing up at the front, and we see Malcolm and Malcolm standing up at the front, and you think that this is going to be the wedding of Ellen to Malcolm. But as we're about to see, things aren't quite what they seem. So then we see Brian and Murtaugh, and we have Murtaugh saying that, like, they need to get out of there. We flash back to where, Murtaugh had just saved his life at the end of the last one. And they don't know who had done it at this point. They just know that they were the hired killers who tried to kill him, and they're still coming after them. So there ends up still being a bit of a fight here. I ended up abbreviating everybody's names so that I could write faster. So Murtaugh ends up getting an arrow through the leg, but Brian, they kill a couple of the guys right away, and then one of them is still left alive, and so he ties him to a tree. And they Brian beats the shit out of the guy, and he finally admits that Colm Mackenzie hired him. So, good job to everybody who guessed that. I know last week I had all of these reasons why it wasn't truly going to be Colm and whatever, but one of you pointed out in yours, and I think I acknowledged this in your comment, or I replied to them, where they pointed out that Colm was very specific with saying, I won't make any future attempts to take out Brian Fraser. And as soon as you said that, I was like, oh my God, you're right. Because that is all that Colm does, is play word games with people. Like, you are absolutely correct. I was just, like I said, I truly just wanted him to not have done it. I wanted it to have been someone else who found out and wanted to take out Brian. I wanted to believe that maybe it was Malcolm Grant, the senior, like the uncle, who had figured out and just wanted to make sure that Ellen wouldn't mess this up. So that's what I wanted to believe. But as soon as, last week when I was looking at your guys' comments, and one of you pointed out that you were pretty sure it was Colm because of the words he used with Ellen, I was like, you're totally right, So whoever had said that out there, you guys were right, and it was Dougal. And I think it is fair to guess that he had already, like, as soon as he heard, he maybe did that. However, I think he also could have just done it anyway, and, like, I don't even know. Like, either way, it was breaking his word. Like, just because it would have been pretty fast when we look at it, because I think she makes that deal with him, like, immediately. So for him to have the time to have sent someone off before, I think he just straight up lied to her, is what I think. Which both is bad, because he should have called it off, and he didn't, because he didn't trust his sister. And that's going to be his downfall, because them going after that, well, we're going to get to it. I won't skip ahead. I'm already, like, unraveling it. But Colm really was his own downfall, because, I mean, we can believe that Ellen would have come away with Brian anyway. We want to believe that. But I don't know if she would have, if she'd given her, because her word still meant something to her, right? And I don't think she would have been convinced to break it and know the trouble she's putting her family in if they had her back and let Brian live, But we'll never know now, because he had to get too excited about it. Now, one other thing I had just skipped over in my haste to get to this scene is that when Murtaugh agrees to help him, because he's like, what did her, like, eyes tell you when she said she didn't love you? And he's like, she seemed, like, miserable. And Murtaugh was like, she loves you. Like, she's meant for you, is what he said. And so Brian asked, like, will you help me? And Murtaugh says yes. So I didn't want to skip over that, because as I've said throughout this season, how jealous Murtaugh has been really kind of shook me. I knew that he obviously had longing for Ellen, and of course we'll see some more of it, but he just was so, like, angry about it that I didn't get it. But you know what? He was a much younger man before the Murtaugh we'll know later on, and he, had pining feelings for Ellen for a lot longer than Brian did, right? And Brian just swoops in with his, gorgeous black hair and his smirky little grin, and it just won Ellen over so quickly. And I understand why Murtaugh felt lesser than, and to be honest, I felt that type of jealousy in my own life. So I understand it now, and I'm glad that we're past it now. That's not going to continue on any further. They are both on the same page now, and again, we'll have more with Murtaugh going on. But that felt like I said, it felt great to have Diana writing in this, and again, that can all be in my head, but I don't think so, okay, because she's the queen, and we wouldn't have any of this stuff without her, and I like to think that she steered the ship right for Murtaugh, because let's be honest, the show has done a lot of shit to the Murtaugh character that didn't need to be done before, right? Like, they did that with keeping him alive longer than they did, with having him be like a thorn in Jamie's side to some degree, and other things. Like, we just didn't need those things. And this definitely was a beautiful thing to see. So, Brian ends up needing to leave Murtaugh behind. He leaves him at kind of this little hidden, like, cabin or, like, dugout area. And he, of course, knows a secret way into Leoc. And he's gonna go for it. So he has to leave M behind. I know I'm gonna keep saying their initials because I wrote that in my notes. So that's what happened here. So then we go to Leoc and we're having the wedding prep. Ellen gets a odd gift from someone, and I didn't end up writing down what that was. I apologize. That was a little bit ago. And then we skip to, of course, Dougal fucking someone in the corner of the Great Hall up there. And Mara Grant ends up popping her head in. And this is Malcolm's sister. And I immediately was like, oh my God. Okay. Because one of the things I didn't tell you guys is that, because I immediately realized I was wrong, is that when we had the scene in the beginning where there's the bride walking down the aisle, who you're supposed to think is Ellen, I wrote in my notes, could it be like Julia? Is Julia distracting people so they can get away? I had that thought in my head. But then 2 scenes later, Mara Grant pops up and I immediately was like, oh, duh, that's who marries Dougal. I had totally forgot about her, just poofed out of my mind. And part of that is, as I've said, I didn't go back and reread all the history of Ellen and Brian because I just wanted to let the show have it come out, but I am going to look into it now afterwards. And I totally forgot that that's his actual wife. And I mean, a part of that is because we never see Mara Grant. We hear about her in other books. We know that Dougal has 2 daughters with her, but he's always fucking whoever he wants, whenever he wants. And so you just kind of forget that he has a wife and kid. And so as soon as Mara Grant said her name, I was like, oh my God, it was Mara Grant. And Dougal's the one who gets married. Duh. And so anyway, I got very excited. And I also really liked Mara. And mad that I kind of liked her because I really don't want to give 2 shits about Dougal at this point. I really kind of hate him. I hate him and Colm now. Like, I do. Maybe I should have always have hated them, but I just felt they were more complex characters than this, and I really just don't like them. But when she popped in and she's like, as you were, and like, I was like, oh man, I love this chick, and I was immediately happy that Dougal was going to have to be the one to get married. And it's unfortunate that she seems like a pretty cool chick, because she's going to be married to this philandering, warmongering asshole for the rest of her life. And I hope she makes his life hell, but hers is grand. I don't know. Maybe. So then we have Jocasta is back, and she starts off being like bitchy still to start with. But you know what? Ellen makes good, and I appreciate that as well. Like I said, I feel like Diana did a lot of this work for us because they had made Jocasta so harsh and just so whiny in previous episodes. And I know it had to be hard for her. Like, I know that, which is why I feel like they didn't have to push it that hard to have her show resentment. Like, they did everything up to an 11, right? Like, you can show she's bitter about Ellen without her saying, like, I hope you enjoy having to get fucked by some old guy, you know? Like, she didn't have to go that hard to show, like, how her sister hurt her, you know? But they always do everything all the way to the top, you know? But we get some redemption for Jocasta as well, which is beautiful because she's here being all like, meh, 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 and Ellen being the bigger sister and also realizing, like, what she so easily was complicit to for her younger sisters. Ellen apologizes and she's like, I understand what I've done. And we're sisters. Like, I should have talked to you about it. I should have had your back. I didn't understand, you know? And she admits, like, and she doesn't say this, but she was pleasing her father in ways too, is what Ellen was doing. Because it was the idea for this match, and she wanted to prove to her dad that she was thinking like for the family, and she helped set this match up without letting her younger sister have a say, the same say that she herself wants now. So it's a good moment. And then I love Janet being sweet as always, because Ellen's also like, and I apologize to you too. And she's like, not all of us ended up badly. Some of us ended up good, which is a good reminder that not all arranged marriages are awful. And, you know, she didn't end up with quite as grotesque appearing as Jocasta did. So that was sweet. So now we go back to Castle Leathers. And we have a dinner between Simon and Julia, and he's being very grumpy and annoying as always. And so Julia is still like doing her best and like scheming with him or trying to manipulate him and everything. And she convinces him to go have like some rest or something. And he finally says like, you're going to come to my bedroom tonight. We're going to try this again. All that stuff. It's just a very ominous thing where we're like, okay, it's time to make a break for it. Like we've reached the full end of being able to do this and everything. So then we go back to Castle Leoch, and again, so much jumping in this one. This was also almost a 90-minute episode, and so there's even more than usual. We have just lots of hopping and bopping around in here. But we go back to Castle Leoch, and we're having the hen party, which of course is, you know, kind of a bachelorette party, but one of the reasons it was called a hen party is they would actually, like, be plucking hens, the chickens, for the meal the next day. And so they're telling some body stories, and Mara Grant gets a bit bitchy to Ellen, which again, I don't hate Mara for doing this, especially because we know Ellen's about to do the very thing that Mara is afraid she's about to do. But we see Jocasta again stick up for her sister, and she says the classic, like, well, if anyone is going to, like, pick at you, it's gonna be me, because you're my sister. And what is a Grant gonna say about it, you know? So, good on Jocasta. We loved it. Then back to Castle Leathers again, and it is time to run for it. We know that Henry is close. Does the whole thing happen here? Hold on, let me double check that yes, I think it all happens here, because I didn't write a ton of notes. But they're gonna run for it. Henry's waiting for them out there, and wow, her name just went out of my head. Is it Diane? No, what's her name? Davina. Sorry, all the names. Diana, writing, Davina, all of it. Davina, it wants to help her get away, and she says no. As soon as we get out, like, you need to tell, because I don't want you to be in danger for helping me. So as soon as we, like, get going, like, you need to call for help so that he has no reason to blame you. Which so this was one of the predictions I made a while back. I thought that Davina might die trying to help them get away. And so, I mean, I'm glad, at least as of now, that hasn't happened. That's not how Davina goes. And it's also good because then we haven't, as it were, burned our only help there, right? Because truly we don't know fully where this is all going yet. And it would be good to still have someone on our side in Castle Leathers, though it does suck that now Davina probably won't see her son for quite some time, from what we'll guess. And Julia and the baby are now gone too. So that's a bummer. But they make a go for it, and then Julia kind of pretends to be being taken by Henry, so that is it Balak or Ballard or whatever his name is, starts coming after it, and then she has Henry, knocks him out, and they hop on the horse and ride away. And now we're about to see multiple scenes of them just on their way to the place we're going. So just to remind us that they're still on their way, but we will literally drag out the rest of their time in this episode between them on the ride to the stone circles, okay? Because that has to be our dramatic ending, of course. It has to be. But anywho, so they're on the ride. Then we go back to Castle Leoch, and Brian is on the move. He ends up knocking out a guard, putting on a Grant kilt and colors, and sneaking in. Then he, of course, calls for someone, and it happens to be Jocasta. And he basically makes a plea to her. And somehow or another, he's going to tell her the whole story, which we will find out what he told her in just a second. But she's the one who, it's all in her hands. So it was very important that all the little steps we've had with Jocasta that have annoyed us in this season have led up to this point where now she's made up with Ellen and she sees a chance to help her sister in a way that her sister didn't help her, true, but she can do something for her sister that is just truly unmatched, really. Like, Jocasta's putting herself in danger to do this. And it's all because Colin made a mistake, too, which we'll touch on in just a second. But, it feels so good, right? Like I've said through this whole thing, this season really made me dislike a lot of characters that I love. They weren't ever perfect people to begin with. Like Jocasta Cameron, through all the books that you'll hear her name in, she's right on the side of being a loving, doting aunt and one who's fucking up our stuff, right? Like, she's always, like, right there. But at her heart, I always believed Jocasta was a good woman. And so to see her vitriol for her sister has just been really tough for me. And as I've said, there are episodes I don't ever want to watch again, partially because of how Myrta and Jocasta were. But now we see why those were important, and her almost tryst with Myrta was important, because when we get into Ellen's room, where it's only Ellen and Mrs. Fitz, Jocasta brings Brian there, and they're like, Colin broke his word. He sent men after them, and it hurt Myrta. So that not only had Jocasta on Brian's side, but Mrs. Fitz as well, because that's her nephew. And Colin going after Brian, breaking his word to Ellen, also hurt someone Jocasta cared about and someone Mrs. Fitz cared about. And those are the two women that if you have them on your bad side, you're fucked, bro. Because they, Mrs. Fitz alone, like, she runs a lot of that castle in ways you don't know. Maybe not fully yet, because she's not fully the, like, cook and all that. She's the lady's maid to Ellen. But he doth not know what he hath done with his decisions, okay? So this really, like, it leaves the door open now, like, he played right into this, and he lied to her. Oh, wait for this. So there's a scene where she now goes to see him, and she wants to look him in the face and see, if he, like, she just wants to look at him one last time type of thing, right? And so, yeah, after the scene of, like, with Brian, where he's like, I want you to come with me, they're going to figure out how to get out of here, she goes to see her brother. She looks him in the face, and he lies to her. And now he's trying to placate her. He knows they're on a very critical moment. His sister could still fuck this up for him. But also, they're at this real tipping point, and he lies to her face. And then he even makes it sound, she's like, well, you won't be hearing from me much anymore. And he's like, because he gifts her with, like, I think it's this beautiful ink pot to try to make it seem like they'll still write letters, where we all know he's already hinted at this and before, that he wants a spy within the House Grant. And she had said, like, if I marry the Grants, I'll be loyal to them. We won't be doing this. He's still, this is how I took it. I wrote it down. Like, he's still trying to trick her into that. I think it's the sword he also gives her. I can't remember if someone else gifts her the ink pot or whatever. He is going to, like, gift her the sword as well. There was that. So maybe that is a different part where someone wants to gift her with the ink pot or something. But I really apologize if I messed that up. It's been a few days since I've seen this one now because I wasn't able to film right away. But either way, he's insinuating that he still wants them to be talking, which we know in previous episodes he's talked about how she could continue to help her family even after she was married. And she said, if I marry into the Grants, I won't be loyal to you. I'll be loyal to my husband. Like, I would be loyal to that. And now here he is again trying to butter her up when she knows he's lied. He would have had Brian killed when the only reason she fully agreed to this was for Brian, not for her family. Her family has betrayed her at multiple points all through this season. You know, they were jealous of her relationship with her father. They've tried to use her for their own ends, but in a cruel way too, because that's the thing. At the beginning of all this, she was loyal to her family. But the way they wanted to use her, they pushed her away and belittled what her thoughts were and made her feel small. And then when she was in love with someone, they twisted that and tried to use that for their, like, all of these things that they've done along the way, they pushed her to this point where she's like, you know, I'm not a Mackenzie anymore. You know, that's not who I am, right? So she says a quote to him as she leaves, "I need to prepare for my future." So then we skip to a scene of Julia and Henry riding. And then that fades into a memory of right before they were going to come to Scotland. So we fast forward in the future time, and we fast forward a little bit. Claire's a little bit bigger. Now they're on a vacation. It looks like, because I believe she's about like 5 here then. I think it was like 5 when her parents went on this trip, if I'm right. And she's playing with Lamb down on the beach, which, again, as an auntie, there are parts of this that just, like, get to me. But Julia is telling Henry that she's pregnant, and he's telling her about a work trip that he has to Scotland. So how about you come with me, and we'll have this little, like, tryst together, which we know where that will all lead to us, right? So anyway, then we go back to Leoch, and we get back to kind of the beginning of this day is how I wrote it down, right? Because this is back to where we started the episode with. So Ellen is gone and Malcolm is pissed about it. So there is a lot of, like, I didn't write down every quip back and forth, but basically Grant is saying, like, we're either leaving at war or we're leaving with a, like, marriage. So figure it out, right? Colum's already married. His other 2 sisters are already married. There is no other option but Dougal. But guess who we know has a sister? Malcolm Grant has a sister named Mara. And so Dougal is going to be the one that gets hitched. And so now we show this scene again, and literally they didn't like change anything from this, really, because it's all about the angles. Now we see that, yeah, it's Dougal and Colm standing at the front, and it's the Malcolm Grants on the other side, and Mara is the one walking up to get married to Dougal. So Dougal has to make the sacrifice. So, which I just think is wonderful. So then we learn that Mrs. Fitz and Jocasta helped set this up. Brian and Ellen are still hiding down in a room. They've, like, hidden her hair under stuff, and they're just chatting a little bit, and they're waiting for the opportunity to go. They're like, wait till the dinner starts and everyone's starting to get a little drunk, and then we will get you to sneak away and everything. So we go to, like, the dinner, and we see Malcolm drinking and being sad about everything. And then it is bedtime or debauching time for Mara and Dougal. Sorry, what else did I write here? Yeah, I think that must have been the scene, because it was kind of funny, but it also was super awkward, so I didn't watch it too closely. But it was Mara and Dougal are supposed to consummate the marriage, and she just is like, it's funny. This Mara gal was funny because she's like, he's just so flustered by her. She's like, would you rather we not have to look at each other? And then she, like, turns over. And we'll just go past this. There's a couple different scenes they come back to of those 2 fucking, and it's funny. A lot of it's funny. But it also is just like, I'm glad they gave us some levity in here, but it also was like, I really don't care about Dougal getting it off, and I don't care to see him having a good time of it after, you know, all the trouble. To be honest, all the trouble he's caused for the Mackenzies and for his sister. And I mean, again, even though I don't give 2 shits about Colm at this point, for Colm as well, because the trouble for Colm led to trouble for Ellen. So Dougal's 2 swords, the one attached to his body and the one in his hand, are the ones that have caused a lot of this drama, in my opinion. Okay, so it's time for Brian and Ellen to go to run for it. Then we have a scene of Malcolm Sr. talking to Malcolm Jr., and he's just being really sad, and he's like, you can be sad about it later. It's time for revenge. And I was like, wow, wasn't looking forward to that happening. Okay, wasn't looking forward to that happening. And I now sadly have to say that, well, two other things we have to say. So yeah, Malcolm Sr. encourages revenge. Then we go back to the sexy time scene again, like I said, whatever, that's happening. And then we get to see young Rupert and Angus again. I almost missed it because I was like, why are they showing me these two kids like drinking? And I was like, oh yeah, because it's Rupert and Angus, which happy heart to see them. Love them. That was great. It was another moment of levity. So now it's time to run. So Brian and Ellen are going on the run, and they run into Malcolm down there, which I gotta say, as soon as this confrontation was happening, I was sad because here we go, everyone. This was officially the moment where my dream for where Jamie's middle name came from. They must just like that Scottish name of Malcolm. Or maybe Brian has someone in his family that's named Malcolm that we don't know about, because Malcolm picks a fight and tries to kill Brian, and Brian ends up having to kill him. And that's going to be real bad. That's going to be real bad. But I also was sad. I was sad, you guys. I really, and you know what? I blame his uncle, and I blame that Henry wasn't there. Like, of course, Henry needed to be gone. Lord, yes, Henry didn't need to be there. But I have to believe, like, I truly do believe from what we've seen of Malcolm Grant, is that if Henry had been there, being a cooler head for him, and if his uncle hadn't have just told him, you deserve revenge for this, I think Ellen could have talked him down. If he hadn't have kept drinking, I think Ellen could have talked him down. I do. Because there was goodness in this man. And an event like this can either turn someone hard and cruel, or it can be a lesson in like a different way, right? Now, I didn't see lots of pettiness in him before. I think that it was just the culmination of everything. And he's just not going to let them go. He feels so affronted by this. And he isn't going to let them go without a fight, literally. And yeah, Brian has to kill him, which was very sad, actually. So now they really have to make a run for it. So they make it to Murtaugh in their secret little dugout, though. And we have a beautiful moment between all three of them. And yeah, I'm sad that Malcolm had to die, and I'm sad that he wasn't the one to help them, you know. And I know mine was like a pipe dream anyway, but I just saw so much good in him. And in a lot of episodes this season, he was the gentle soul, you know. And Ellen, that doesn't mean Ellen should have just like been with him. I wish that she hadn't been playing such games with her brothers, that she couldn't have just said something to Malcolm before, you know, that she couldn't have at some point been honest with him, you know. These are just my musings on it, because I liked that character a lot. I did. He seemed like a pure good soul in a lot of ways, who had a fanciful love for a woman he'd known since they were young, and it was very quickly turned cold and hard, and I don't think it had to. I'm not like fully surprised that it did, but I don't think it had to. And now the death of him, who knows what that will be used for later on. You know, we will see. Okay, so then we have a flash to Castle Leathers, and Simon, of course, now knows that Julia has escaped, and Davina, of course, told right away, and they have found Ballard, whatever his name was, Balak? Is it Balak? Maybe it's Balak. I don't know. Injured, and Simon is gonna send people. And then, of course, who should show up but fucking Bug, Archbug shows up, and they're looking for Henry, because he escaped somehow. And this is depressing to me in a lot of ways. So now they're on the hunt as well, which sucks. Then we have a moment with Brian and Ellen, and I made this right. So Brian did get injured by Malcolm, and there's a moment, and I wrote down that this felt very Jamie and Claire moment, because he has to take his shirt off and she's working on his injury, which felt very Jamie and Claire. And there's something of like, he's like, I'm so sorry for how it all went, and he says, I'm meant to be with you, you know. So now we have just quite a few flashes of scenes in a row. Like, you'll see, like, these are all scene changes right here. So we have Henry and Julia having to sleep for the night, which this stressed me out a lot because they had a fire going, which I know they needed for warmth, but also like Bug and them are looking for them. And so, but Henry's holding William for the first time, and they're being hunted. Then we have a scene of Ellen and Murtaugh together, and oh, this was really beautiful. And I did feel for Murtaugh a lot, but I think this was good too, because in a way of him giving her this gift, which we see him now as a, like, you know, gift to her, he gives her the bracelets he had made from the boar tusks. And it's a really beautiful moment of acceptance and of, you know, of like promising to, you know, he tells us in the future when he has a scene with Claire, he explains, like, you know, he was in love with her, but he promised to look after, you know, her and her children and them for always, which is a really beautiful moment. You know, it's really beautiful. So then we go to Murtaugh and Brian, and it is in the next morning, and Murtaugh, who is still injured himself though, says that he's gonna go hunting. And he'll probably be gone for the whole day. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, he gives him. And then we have a very, like, long scene, which we do deserve it. I'm glad this episode was a bit longer for it, because this means Brian and Ellen can have some make-up sex together, basically, or if they were even in a fight, I don't know. And we have a good long scene of them together. We have a lot of cuddling and a lot of talking, and still not truly making plans for the future, which is what I feel like we should have done at any point now. But we have them, show them then later in the day, after their copious amounts of coitus that they've had, that the fiery crosses have been lit, all right? And if you've been around a while, you'll know that that is a call to war, and the Jacobite rebellion is what he believes that it's for. Now, I know that is what everyone was making him for, but I also wonder, someone has to have found Malcolm dead in the, like, just think about this. He's literally the Laird. Brian killed the Grant Laird in the basement of Castle Leoch. What if it's a call to war in the clans? Like, I don't know. I know that it's supposed to be for that. I don't know. I'm confused on if I'm pretty sure the fiery crosses are for that, because that's what everyone was making them for. But I was having the feeling too of, like, is there going to be a war between Mackenzie and Grant now? I mean, maybe not, because Mara just married Dougal, but also Malcolm Grant is dead in the, like, someone's have to have found that by now, because it's been a whole, like it's been a whole night and it's the next day. Like, someone has found him dead down there, you know? How well did Brian, like, hide him? Like, they're going to find him dead there. And Mrs. Fitz and Jocasta are going to know who did it. Like, for reals. I mean, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll blame it on an assassin somewhere else or something. I don't know. But that's definitely one of the cliffhangers for the next thing. So, anyway, but he sees those and he says, I mean, I will have to rise up to the call or else we'll have to leave Scotland. And she says, in a very clear fashion, that I'll stand with you, whatever comes. I'm your wife, you know. So, we've just, like, escaped. And now Brian's going to have to join this, like, war effort, too. So, we'll see what happens there. Okay, so now we get to the final scenes here. We have Julia and Henry arrive at the Stones. And they come to the thought, what if the baby can't go? Like, we don't know that he can. They don't understand this. Henry's like, well, what if it's genetic? you know, we haven't had these same discussions that would come about from, you know, someone like Roger and Bree and Claire having discussions. They don't know how this shit works at all. They don't even know how they fully came through. But Henry knows both of them were able to go, so shouldn't their baby be able to go? And Julia says, like, we can't risk that. So one of us needs to try to go through with the baby, and if the baby gets left behind, the other one, like, will come back and join and we'll be here, but we need someone to stay here so that if the baby gets left, like, one of us is with him, right? Which, that's kind of a logical sense. It's kind of like if you remember back in the day in math class, you'd get the logic problem of, like, there's 3 of you and a dog and a rowboat and only 2 people can go across at a time, and, like, it's a whole thing or whatever. But there's also pressure because the Grants and, the Grants, Archbug and them are on the way. And because there's been so much around these stones, apparently they always know where they're going. It's always here. And so because he's the one in direct danger from the Grants, Julia tells him to go through with the baby and she'll be waiting right there. And he's like, no, I can't leave you to face them. And so he grabs her hand and is pushing it onto the stone, which I don't know if that'll work the way that he thinks it will, because in general, like, he's not Jamie. He's not going to be stuck behind. Like, if they're both touching it, I feel like they would all go through together, but I don't know. But the Grants are coming, and of course it does the good old cut when Henry is trying to push her hand onto it. But then it switches back to the future, and they're saying goodbye to Claire. So we're on that train station, and Claire is staying with Uncle Lamb, and they're waving goodbye to Claire, and we know that that's the last time that Claire saw her parents. And we still don't know what happened, because that is the end of the season. So, that episode was a lot there. So, yeah, we're left with a lot of mystery still. They managed to drag out, of course, the Henry and Julia stuff. Like, we have no idea. Will Julia, like, I can't imagine that Julia and the baby really get through. I'm just so befuddled about, maybe they go to a different time still. Like, that is absolutely a possibility. That what if, because he's holding her hand, they all go through and they end up somewhere totally different. Like, that is a thought that I think could happen, because I just don't think they get stuck here. Like, I just don't believe that that could work in any way. But if they're all 3, because again, he's holding her hand and pushing it, but it's not like Jamie, where Jamie can't go through the stone. So, like, Jamie puts Claire's hand on and she goes through and he's left just touching the stone. Henry also can travel. So what if they all go through and they end up somewhere totally different? To me, that's at least a way that we can, like, you know, fix our timeline stuff they're trying to go around. And they just end up in a totally different time that doesn't connect with anything. I don't know. Because they don't even know yet to think of where to go home. You know, like, they don't know that they need to think of where they need to be. Any of that stuff. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how that works out. So as for the Brian and Ellen stuff, I think that is all basically on track. So my guess would be, they're going to be involved in, he'll be forced to be a part of this rebellion, but somehow they're going to end up with Lallybroch. Hopefully there still needs to be, at some point, I think they're going to try to kidnap her away. I don't know why now, because Malcolm Grant is dead, so there's no one for her to be forced to marry. I mean, I'm sure they could come up with someone else, but there still needs to be a time, in my opinion, where Ellen needs to stab Colum, or not Colum, she doesn't stab Colum, she stabs Dougal at some point. So I really wish that had been who caught her, and she stabbed him for them to get away, instead of us killing Malcolm Grant. That is what I had always hoped was happening, but whatever. And then, but otherwise I think the Brian and Ellen stuff did, like, end up in the spot it was supposed to be. So I don't really have any critiques of that. as a whole, they've gotten to the point now where they've escaped together. I think they need to go and get married as soon as they can. But I don't know how they end up at Lollybrook. So obviously this next season will be how they're going to end up there and getting that set up where it is and everything. So we'll see how that happens and all that. But yeah, overall, I think just the disquiet I have for this date, like I should rate this episode. This episode I would probably give like a 7. I think there was a lot of wasted time of just showing Henry and Julia on the horse riding somewhere. There was a lot of people just riding on horses and stuff in this one. I don't like how stuff happened with Malcolm Grant. I was just kind of unsatisfied with a lot of that part of it. But overall, I think this episode helped us get to a point that felt more on track. I think that overall, the unsatisfying part of this show is the Henry and Julia stuff. I've said that since the beginning. To me, that stuff is all fully made up, and so it doesn't quite fit with everything. Though, as I've also said, I enjoyed the acting of the Henry and Julia actors very much. I liked knowing how they fell in love. I loved seeing that. I just don't like all the stuff that was made up with how they interact with Jamie's parents and how that stuff happened, because it just doesn't make sense to me that so many of the Mackenzies have met Sassenach before that really had a big role in some things. And it just never would have gotten mentioned. It's not that they wouldn't have met Sassenach before, but Claire looks a lot like him in a lot of ways and sounds like him, and it never gets remarked upon, you know? That's the problem with doing stuff in a prequel, with messing with shit, and then, you know, pretending nothing happened with it, you know? It just doesn't quite fit right about things and stuff. But, yeah. It's just so interesting. It's so interesting. And yeah, I don't know. There's still a lot of processing I have to do with it. With the season 2 is where I really get worried about what they're going to do with Julia and Henry characters. Like, what story could you possibly tell with them? Where will they get sent? What is going on? But for Brian and Ellen, I guess there's enough for another 10 episodes of the drama with their families. I'm sure they'll come up with it. I'm just torn on the show. Like, I stand by the fact that if they'd made a 10-episode series that was just about Scotland, they could have more drama to do with the Rising, but it could have been about Brian and Ellen. I don't think we needed to have Henry and Julia in there, though I still loved them. I just don't know what it does for the Outlander universe, as they're calling it, as a whole. You know, I don't know what it does. Besides being like, oh, well, we have to show the love story of both Jamie and Claire's parents. And I don't think you need to. I think there was enough with Brian and Ellen to make a 10 episode that told their whole story. And like, I don't know, ended with the birth of Jamie. You know, like the story could end with that. Because then it would still feel like a happily ever after. We don't have to see Jamie's mom die. We don't have to see that part. Like, that could have been the end of their story, is like they have their children, they're on Lollybrook, their relations are okay with their family, and they made their happily ever after. But shows are gonna make their money, like that's what they're gonna do. And I'm most nervous even more about, now that they have these two worlds going, what other Easter eggs is the show going to have placed in season 9, and what things are they going to mess with? I just saw an interview, just a snippet of it. Of course, the interview can take stuff out of context, but just before I was filming, because Diana was commenting on season 8, and she said that she hadn't given them any stuff from book 10 at all, and so it's mostly going to be based on book 9, which is what I had always hoped it would be, because she hasn't written book 10, and I don't want them telling me parts of the story that she hasn't told me yet. So in her own words, she says season 8 is mostly based on bees, which I'm totally okay with it being based on bees. There's a lot that happens in bees, okay? There's a lot of Revolutionary War stuff. There's a lot of family stuff. There's a lot of travel that happens. There's good storylines for William, for Ian, for Brianna. Like, there's good stuff for all of that. There's more than enough to tell a whole story. So, yeah, I look forward to that. But anyway, I could ramble on forever and ever, but I'm going to wrap it up with this one. Please, let's have a robust discussion in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts were on it. Let me know your thoughts as the season overall. Maybe I'll do a small little video reacting to some people's theories. I don't know. I can't promise that I'll do this because, like I said, I don't know that. Maybe I'll make some like YouTube shorts reacting to different people's thoughts. That could be a thing because that doesn't really affect my channel and we could still have the discussion with that. But yeah, let me know what you thought of the season as a whole. My final thoughts on what my favorite episodes were. I was going to do that. Let me tell you what my favorite episode was. Let me find it here. I'm pretty positive that my favorite episode was... Okay, well, my least episode was Birthright, okay? I'm pretty sure I made that well known. That Birthright was my least favorite episode. That was the one with the birth of William and just all the ridiculous shit going on there. And my favorite episode was probably Needfire, which was the one before Birthright, actually. So episode 5, which is when Brian and Ellen actually, like, finally have sex, I think. Which, I mean, I know. It's not because of that. It's because they actually talk to each other for more than a glance. So I think Needfire was probably my favorite episode. And Birthright was my least favorite episode, I think. I think that is how I feel about it. Though I did really appreciate as well last episode when Henry and episode 9 Braemar. I think I like Braemar as well because there were so many meetups of people that I wanted to see interactions with. So yeah, but anywho, those are my thoughts on Blood of My Blood. Thank you guys for coming to these reactions and recaps. I know they're just really raw video. I don't do big production value. Here it's just me talking in front of my camera. But what an interesting thing. At the end of the day, though, too, I just want to end on a positive note. I think the show was beautiful to look at. There was still great actors. Like, if an actor can make you hate them so much, like, let's talk about, well, we won't talk about, but mention, like, Simon Fraser, the way that man can make you hate him so much. Like, these actors are excellent, right? They are excellent. It was beautiful to watch. Even when I was hating what they were talking about and saying, like, it was beautiful to watch. I really enjoyed that. And yeah, they're just so talented, you know, and I'm really looking forward to the final season of Outlander, even though it'll be hard. And the last book in the series, which we don't know when it'll be, but if you enjoy my Outlander content, I will, of course, review the final season. Whenever that last book comes out, I will absolutely review that. I had a few people ask me to start at the beginning and review episodes again, because I didn't do individual episode reviews for seasons 1 through 3, and that just, unfortunately, that just won't happen for, as I said, that kind of hurts my channel on it. But I'm not completely unopposed to visiting Outlander at some other times. I don't know what that means in the future. But I mean, I love Outlander, so I'm never going to stop talking about it. It's always my #1 favorite, the one book I recommend to everyone. So never say never. I need to find a way that I could actually add more to it than just repeat things I've said before. And I don't quite know what that might be. But anyway, let's round this off. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. I love you all so much. I appreciate you. And I hope you take care of yourself. And we'll see you next time. Bye.